Hey guys, welcome to Ellie Love Creative, and today we're talking about a recent photo shoot that I had where I shot some beautiful RGB style photography and how I achieved these looks. Now, if you're new to this channel, I am really into shooting with continuous lights. I have a videography background. I've been a photographer for a long time. I've been a videographer for a long time, and as a hybrid shooter, I tend to want to shoot with continuous video lights. For a long time, you couldn't really do that, but now we're at a point where a lot of the LED lights that are on the market right now have high outputs. They can do a lot of cool things like RGB, and you're just in a better spot as a photographer because you can use them for video and photography. So I recently had a shoot with the lovely model, Maria. She is phenomenal to work with. She was the perfect model for this just because not only was I shooting with continuous lighting and I was experimenting with different colors and experimenting with different techniques, but she was very patient. She was very outgoing. She was willing to take the time it needed so that we could get the looks that we needed to get, and it was just great. Another reason why everything was really slow is I decided to shoot the majority of the whole photo shoot with a vintage manual lens, which is this lens right here, which is a great vintage lens. It's a Pentax Cosina? Don't know if it's Cosina or Cosina. 28 to 70 f4. It's a vintage zoom. It also has macro capabilities. I plan on shooting way more photography with vintage lenses. And I also plan on doing a video with all my vintage lenses that I've picked up recently. And I'm a big fan of shooting vintage lenses because I think it just gives everything a more cinematic, more filmic, just a unique characteristic to your images. Now, the only issues with one of the issues with shooting with vintage lenses is they're manual. So a lot of times I had to magnify on my Canon R6 just to make sure everything was in focus, and it made me slow down, which was great because I think the images turned out better because I had more time to finesse an image. And working with Maria, she was cool with me just having her hold a pose for a long time. Now, one of the first looks we did was on my references. I really wanted to play around with blue, red, and orange. Those were the colors I really wanted to play around with. On this channel, you've seen me do a wave look in the past where I used Mylar paper to give it a more wavy look when it came to the lighting. This time I wanted to step it up a notch and really infuse not only the wavy look with the lighting, but also more blue, so it felt more like ocean. It felt like you had the waves, but then you also had the color. Now, as far as lighting, I used my new Aputure 300C, phenomenal light, great output, RGB. Honestly, I think this is one of the best Amaran lights that they've made. Way more affordable than the Aputure 300 series, and you just get a really good solid light. I also used a RGB light that I have at my photo studio, Sage Studios. Check the link in the description if you want to book our studio. I used the light that we have there at that studio, which is a Ambitful, whatever, RGB light. And then I used the Aputure 120D. Shooting into the Mylar paper. So I used the two RGB lights to infuse a blue color. Didn't matter if it was the same blue, just blue infused. I used a 120D to shoot onto the Mylar paper, which would create that wave effect. And then to key the model, I used a Godox 400 FS400 B Bicolor light matte, which is what I'm using right now. I can't remember how big it is. It's pretty big light that I'm using. And I use that as the key light just above the model, kind of like a top light, but also as a key light. And I put a grid on that light so it didn't spill up everywhere. Now, with these lights, I really like the fact that I could dial it in. I could see what I was doing. That's what, it's great about shooting with continuous lighting. Now, as far as wardrobe, we had this blue see-through dress. She had lingerie underneath. She was topless for the top portion. And we just kind of played around with light and shadows. And I think the blue worked out really good because the blue mixed with the blue background and the waves, it just was a really cool combination. What I did do in post was a lot of the color was coming out a little bit purple. on the images. So I kind of shifted that hue to more blue, and I'm really, really excited and really happy with the way it turned out. Now for look 2, we did a red and orange look, and the lighting setup for this really didn't change that much. All I did for this was I changed the hues on the 2 backlights, so I made it more of a orange reddish tone. I knew that I could shift that in post if I really needed to. I made that RGB backlights on the background more red and orange, and then I took the 120D that was shooting on the Mylar, and I put a Fresnel on it, and I basically directed it and made it more like a hard circle spot, so that we had the red, we had the orange, and then we had some daylight that was kind of creating kind of like a circle. And then on top of that, I took the Godox light mat, and that was above her, and I basically warmed it and made it more of a 3,500 Kelvin, maybe 4,000 Kelvin, I can't remember. Just made it more warmer because I wanted that warm, orange, more moody skin tones. And I really love the way that these images turned out. She had this black dress that we put on her, and we put this like rose choker that I felt like really fit the vibe. And we just played around with a fan so that her hair was blown in the wind, and really played around with her laying on the floor and almost basking in this fake sunlight that we have created. And I think it turned out really, really good. Now, if I could switch anything in the future, what I would do is I'd get a more high output light for the spot, and I would have used my spotlight, my spot mount projector, just because I would want more of a actual like super circle, a more defined circle. But I think it turned out really good, and I'm glad that Maria was patient with me on this one, because the idea and the finished product, I was changing around different things, and I think I'm glad that we took our time to really finesse that image and get it to where it actually turned out to be. One of the major takeaways when it comes to RGB lighting is you really want to experiment with different techniques. You really want to take advantage of the fact that you can choose any color. I think one of the things I like to do is I like to match the wardrobe to the background. I think you have a lot of capabilities with RGB lights and bicolor lights to do something like that. Experimentation, I like the fact that I can create a gradient with RGB lighting. It doesn't have to just be a red background. It can be a red and orange background, a red and blue background. It can be a gradient if you really want to. And I just like the experimentation with RGB lights. I think it's really cool that now we're at a point where all these different manufacturers are coming out with these awesome lights that are high output, that are RGB, that are bicolor, that are soft, that are, that have great modifiers. And we're just in a really good spot now where we can really experiment as creators. And That's what I'm loving doing, and I'm loving shooting with continuous lights. But that's all I have to say about RGB lighting. I have a lot more footage from this particular shoot. I'm gonna do another video where I break down my other setups from this day. But this was just a video. I just wanted to talk about RGB in particular. And I hope you got some insight from it and you found it helpful. So that's all I have to say today about RGB lighting for photography. Let me know if you have any questions about photography or videography in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Peace.